Chapter 68. Chucky was hit in the head and dizzy. Before he could react, Siddle, who was guarding the table, had already used a rope to tie him up. Chucky, with his flowing blonde hair and distorted face, twisted his body angrily, struggling like a hairy caterpillar. Only when the blonde girl stepped on him did he gradually stop. The other end of the rope was tied to the leg of the heavy wooden bookcase. Siddle tied Chucky up, pulled a low chair to sit in front of him, and curiously propped his chin up. "I know who you are. The famous murderer Charles Lee Ray. I don't understand. Why are you so persistent in finding me?" Siddle guessed that the doll that Andy had abandoned might come looking for her after it escaped. So she hadn't slept yet and prepared a trap, but... The blonde girl frowned slightly, looking a little confused. "Is it because I got your accomplice arrested that you came to take revenge?" Chucky stopped struggling, looking at Siddle with a dissatisfied expression. "Why should I take revenge for that coward? Speaking of which, I still have to thank you for sending him to jail." A smile flashed across the blonde girl's snow-white face. She leaned forward slightly, quietly looking at Chucky. "Then why did you crawl into my house in the middle of the night?" Chucky's eyes were dull. The doll with a lively expression rolled its eyes. "I saw the news on TV and found out that you guys sent that idiot to jail, so I just wanted to make friends. I swear I didn't mean any harm." Then it saw the girl who had been keeping an indifferent expression all this time suddenly smile gently. Siddle happily patted its shoulder. "What a coincidence, I also want to be friends with you." Her blue eyes were full of enthusiasm, sincerely praising, "Your mouth smells so bad." Chucky was stunned, then unconsciously retorted, "You too." The blonde girl seemed a little embarrassed. She said, "Maybe I'm too excited. What I want to say is dash. You're really good at swearing. I think we can discuss this further." Sigh. The blonde girl sighed, seemingly dissatisfied, complaining, "Since I came here, I haven't communicated normally with anyone." Chucky. Could this normal way of communicating refer to communicating by cursing? Although he still didn't understand what was going on, Chucky rolled his eyes repeatedly and started shouting, "I'll be good friends with you. Now quickly untie me. Is this how you treat your friends?" Siddle, wait a minute. She turned around, took out her cell phone, turned on the recorder, looked at Chucky expectantly, and urged, "Can we talk about the words you use to curse others first?" The atmosphere suddenly became stagnant. After looking straight at the girl in front of her for a few seconds, Chucky realized she was serious about recording her curses. Chucky felt deeply toyed with and insulted. He was extremely angry and cursed loudly, "You stupid pig, slap." Before he could finish speaking, he received a slap on the face. After slapping the doll, Siddle slowly withdrew his hand and kindly reminded, "The person you should scold is not me, but that clown." She was especially thoughtful in bringing the phone closer to Chucky. Siddle happily waited for this swearing machine to work, but after being beaten, there was still a red handprint on Chucky's cheek. His plastic face was deformed. He was furious, fiercely turned his head back. "You bastard. Slap." "I won't." Slap slap slap. After a while, Siddle looked at Chucky's swollen face, a little worried if his swollen face could speak. She thought for a while, turned around to get a shirt, rummaged through her pocket and took out a cigarette. Siddle looked at the cigarette for a while. She didn't smoke, but after beating someone up at the ball yesterday, Siddle suddenly felt that something was missing in her hand. In order to highlight the personality of a cold and cruel bully, Siddle specially asked someone for a cigarette and waited for Belch to come out. In order to avoid the situation where the cigarette burned out before Belch arrived before she could even pose, Siddle asked someone else add another cigarette. The cigarette was still in her pocket. Siddle hadn't thrown it away yet, so now she could use it for a new purpose. The blonde girl lazily turned back to sit on the low chair, took out a lighter from her side pocket. A sinister smile appeared on her fair face, leaned close to the ugly Chucky doll's face, pressed the lighter button and lit it with a click sound. The fire that broke out was a great threat to a plastic toy. Chucky's face changed. He said fiercely, "Hurry up and put this thing away. I'm warning you." Until the temperature of the fire caused the golden hair to slowly wither, Chucky's tone gradually weakened. Please, take this thing away from me. I can do as you say. Siddle put away the lighter. Really? The blonde girl calmly pressed the lighter in front of her. The blue flame lit the cigarette she was holding between her fingertips. She lightly flicked the cigarette ash, then bent down and pressed the burning cigarette end against Chucky's moving eye. Chucky screamed in pain. Ah, you bastard, I'm fucking you. Siddle lowered her head and stepped on the hemp rope and its hands that were tied behind its back, laughing lightly. Stop with those petty tricks of yours. The two arms behind it continuously struggled to untie the hemp rope that was tying it up. Sizzling. The cigarette butt touched Chucky's plastic eye socket, making a sound like fire meeting water. Siddle pulled the cigarette back, seeing that the fire in the cigarette butt had gone out, and a little liquid was leaking from the plastic eye socket. Siddle raised her eyebrows in surprise, a little curious about the structure of this doll's body. Chucky rolled on the ground in pain, now one of its eyes was almost burned black. Siddle stepped on its cheek, in case it bumped around and broke anything. She calmly said, I hate trouble. If you don't want to be my friend, then I can only use the simplest way to achieve my goal. Siddle was not a patient person. If it weren't for her aunt's entrustment, she wouldn't have traveled thousands of miles to this small town of Derry. She had also painstakingly created her own personality as a cold and gloomy bully to bring Belch back from his rebellious teenage years to the right path. Siddle had dealt with school bullies for many years, so she understood the psychology of people like Belch very well. If you present yourself as an upright person and give serious teachings, it probably won't have much effect on teenagers in their rebellious period. Siddle was too lazy to waste her breath, so she chose the most direct and quickest method. Turn herself into a bully, then let the bullies feel the pain of being bullied. In fact, although Siddle herself had dominated the school and occupied the position of the big sister for many years, she still appeared arrogant and cold on the outside. However, only Siddle herself knew that year, squatting at the end of the alley at 2 in the morning with a brick in her hand, looking fierce, but in reality, she had to hug her shoulders and shiver in the cold wind, how ashamed she felt. So later, when other people went to fight, their backpacks were all filled with weapons, and she also carried a backpack, only inside was a big cotton jacket. The difference between the school bully in everyone's eyes and the school bully in reality was so big. It was probably as deep as the Mariana Trench. Thinking back, Siddle couldn't help but sigh. So what she said to Belch wasn't wrong. Although she had tried to scare him many times, Belch was actually the person she had spent the most patience to teach in these years. But Chucky didn't have this privilege. Siddle stepped on his face. Because he was tied with rope, no matter how strong Chucky was, he couldn't escape. She bent down again, coldly staring at Chucky's face twisted in pain, curled her lips, and slowly lit the cigarette again. Although I don't have much patience, when I torture others, I can expand my limits. To take a little more care. Siddle looked down, ignoring Chucky's pleas, emotionlessly pressing the cigarette butt against its face, making a sizzling sound, leaving a shallow indentation. Like the reaction when human skin was burned, Chucky screamed in pain, while Siddle looked at the magical scene in front of her and became more curious about the body structure of this Chucky doll. She calmly glanced at the dissection tools in the drawer at the corner of the table. It seemed that she hadn't used them since coming to Derry Town. Oh. But Siddle still had to suppress some strange desires. Anyway, Chucky was still useful for now. Siddle didn't torture it for too long. After Chucky begged for mercy, she took out her cell phone again and let it start cursing. Chucky, with messy yellow hair, his whole body tied with rope, moved his wounded cheek and leaned into the phone and started cursing angrily. The more he cursed, the angrier he became. He remembered that he only wanted to switch bodies with that boy, using soul transfer to put his soul into a human body, to regain a new life. If he had chosen to climb straight into that boy's window, he would have succeeded long ago. If not for the fact that he still wanted to take revenge on the person in front of him. Chucky cursed continuously, becoming more and more regretful and indignant. If he had known this would happen, why did he do it in the first place? Siddle took out a pair of scissors from somewhere, squatted to one side, propped his chin up and listened, occasionally nodding in agreement, his eyes filled with admiration for Chucky's literary talent. Chucky spoke for a long time, then stopped to catch his breath. Seeing Siddle happily saving the recording on his phone, he couldn't help but say, "Don't you know how to curse others too? Why don't you go and curse yourself?" He could guess a little bit about the reason Siddle saved the recording. It was because of that clown. The blonde girl held the silver scissors in one hand, pondered for a moment, and said matter-of-factly, "Because I have a younger brother who has finally reformed, I want to build a good image in front of him, so I can't talk nonsense and curse like a manic depressive." Mainly because it was too ridiculous. Chucky, he had a reasonable reason to suspect that Siddle was cursing at him. He quietly rolled his eyes when Siddle couldn't see. "All right, I did as you said." Chucky said, "You should let me go." According to the friendly negotiation between Siddle and him before, after he finished cursing with all his dirty words, Siddle would untie the rope and let him go. Wait a minute. But the girl didn't seem to have that intention. She tilted her head, her blue eyes sparkling with curiosity, the scissors in her hand flashing silver. "Is there anything else?"